I can't imagine Arne Slot is a big name in Liverpool's dressing room prior to last week.
It's more than possible that another big bid could come in and really, really tempt Liverpool.
Hello and welcome back to Monday Vibes, everybody. Great to be back. Not literally for us, because unfortunately for the third week in a row, we are filming this for a second time. This time a faulty SD card, which is binned along with the Zoom from last week. It's all getting binned. But unfortunately, we just don't have enough time to do a normal Monday Vibes. But we are going to talk about one specific topic, which is hugely relevant to what is going on in world football and Premier League football in particular right now. But I'm joined by Mike here. You okay?
Yes, I'm all right, Diggs. I'm all right. I personally blame the PGMOL. I think there's an agenda against Football Daily. Very weird
that Zoom a Luton fan.
Zoom is a Luton fan. That's what I'm hearing anyway. It's funny. Sunday Vibes, we don't have any technical issues. It always seems to be on a Monday, and we're using like very similar equipment. So who knows what's going on?
Sunday Vibes was great, by the way. You should check
Sunday
it out.
Vibes was good. Yeah, go and check that out after this. We did our we each brought forward our 10 signings of the season in order. There was quite a lot of heat debate over certain things. Someone might have put Jude Bellingham very low, and someone may have left Harry Kane out altogether. So go and check that out.
Controversy plenty.
But yeah, so obviously we would love to speak. Well, we did speak at length about Arsenal's win over Spurs. We spoke at length about the relegation battle, but we just don't really have enough time to do that now. Well done, Arsenal. Keeping the pressure on City there. Still top of the league. I think Arsenal have a really good chance, a better chance actually at Premier League glory now than they did, I think, a week ago. I think we can all agree on that. Saka, brilliant. Declan Rice, brilliant. Havertz, brilliant. Havertz, absolutely amazing. But shall we just get into it? Let's get into it. Arne Slot at Liverpool. Of course, we kind of missed this news a little bit in terms of Football Daily scheduling last week. We filmed Sunday Vibes on Thursday. News really dropped on Friday that it was all but sealed, wasn't it? Arne Slot going to Liverpool, Jürgen Klopp's replacement. So we thought, let's go through. Well, let's first of all give a bit of background to Arne Slot for anyone who's not overly familiar with his work and whether he's suitable for the job, because I think, that is certainly a debate and an interesting one, given that, Michael Edwards has gone for him and they got him through the door this early. But also the main things that he needs to focus on, the problems that he needs to fix at Liverpool. Of course, Liverpool not been in the best of form recently, have they? That 2-2 draw with West Ham on the weekend, a game they probably could have won on another day. But yeah, Dukes, I mean, let's start with Slot. I mean, what in terms of his background, what kind of stands out to you in terms of his suitability for this role?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a good place to start. So to give a bit of background to him, he was a midfielder, mainly played in the 1990s. I was reading reports about his playing style, not known for his pace, but apparently had very good vision. It feels like often midfielders make the best managers. They are the brains of most teams. They are, having to have the best concepts and ideas of space and where people are on the pitch. It seems to make a lot of sense. He then went to FC Canberra. He has spent a lot of time actually as an assistant coach, as backup. So he is known as, and in those cases, often assistant coaches. This is a bit of a generalisation, but they do the majority of the day-to-day training work. And then the man management more comes down on the manager's side. They have ultimate say managers. So he's kind of been on both sides, which I think is quite helpful. Had his first opportunity with FC Canberra, which was a second-tier side at the time. Took them from 14th to 3rd in the Eerste Divisie, so that's the Dutch second tier. It really made his name in the Dutch Cup, in the KNVB Cup, beating Ajax on the way to the semi-finals. He then gets an opportunity, a huge step up with AZ Alkmaar. Got them to the knockout stages of Europe. Nearly won the league in 2019-20, was level on points with Ajax at the start, or I should say at the start of COVID, or when COVID stopped the season. And unlike most other leagues in Europe, the Eredivisie stopped. It felt like that was a great opportunity for AZ Alkmaar. They were playing some brilliant football with the likes of Teun Koopmeiners, who's now at Atalanta, Calvin Stengs, who he's now got at Feyenoord. That sort of calibre of player, and they were playing some wonderful stuff. He was then fired by AZ Alkmaar for supposedly entering into talks with Feyenoord. And that was ahead of the 21-22 season. So he's fired a few months early and then took over. First year takes Feyenoord to the knockout stages of the to the Conference League final, I should say, beating the likes of Marseille along the way, Partizan Belgrade as well. Second year though, just their second league title since 1999. Amazing. The previous one was that Dirk Kuyt side under Dick Advocat, I believe, in 2017. And his Feyenoord side are known for 4-2-3-1, incredibly high presses, turnovers in the opposition third. Actually, interestingly, since he took over at Feyenoord, no team in Europe's top 7 leagues has had more turnovers in the final third, above Liverpool. And their points won from losing positions is actually level with Liverpool in that time as well. So it feels like a stylistic fit, more so than Ruben Amorim. Less of an evolution from Klopp's 4-3-3 to his 4-2-3-1. They are known for intricate short passing. They're actually really known, which I found quite interesting, the lowest amount of switches of play, which is rare for a high possession side in the Eredivisie. So they often really funnel most of their attacks down one side. They are known for, intricate attacking passing networks, and then the winger really drives hard at the opposition defences. A lot of fouls drawn, and they have slightly evolved their side of play as well, with Santiago Jimenez arriving and becoming, one of that sort of emerging bracket of really top strikers in world football, really. Excellent in the air, and they are second for crosses in the Eredivisie as well. So it's not just Pep style, very short passing. He does feel like he's got a little bit of a mix to his tactics, which is nice, I think. And to be honest, even this year, where they are second in the Eredivisie, but they are set to finish with more points than they did last year when they won the Eredivisie, and they still won the Dutch Cup. They have finished, or they will finish second to PSV, who have put together an amazing campaign on for an Eredivisie record points tally. But it feels like he's kind of done everything he can without being given that opportunity at a top club. And I saw Jamie Carragher a week or so ago saying, look, this is a massive step up. It's a huge job, which I totally agree with. It'd be foolish to say that, it's an easy job to take over from Klopp. I think it's the hardest job since Sir Alex Ferguson stepped down, to be honest, because Arsenal at the time when Arsene Wenger stepped down were not competing on full fronts every year in the way that Liverpool have been in the last few years. But having said all that, unless you are going to give managers like this and Ruben Amorim an opportunity at a top club, you're going to end up with the same 8 or 10 managers just revolving around the same elite clubs, and they'll all be slightly defined by failure at different points because they can't all be successes at the same point. So I'm excited to see how well he does at Liverpool. I think it's a nice tactical fit and a guy that has earned his stripes. But as Jamie Carragher correctly points out, McCubs, it is a really difficult job because form is bad. Really bad for Liverpool standards, and there are some personnel question marks.
Yeah, I mean, we say form is bad, but I mean, Liverpool will still end the season, I think, with a higher points tally than most people would have predicted at the start of the campaign. I think it's easy to get swept up in what is quite a bad feeling at the moment, and I think it's a weird one. I think if Klopp wasn't leaving and Liverpool had fallen off like this, I don't think people would be that bothered. I think people are just a bit sad that Klopp's not going to be able to have, the nicest of goodbyes, because it's all kind of fallen apart, both kind of in terms of results and just the kind of feeling around the club. Everyone just feels like everyone's a bit defeated,
especially when he's like having a spat with his best player of his era at the weekend. Yeah,
obviously that was clearly like not a bit unnecessary. He wouldn't have been planning for that, and I guess that's the problem when the best player of your tenure actually is, not playing well enough to make the starting 11. Like let's face it, with Mo Salah, and we'll get on to Mo Salah, but let's start with that, because obviously by the time we're filming this, David Ornstein has come out and said that Liverpool are planning to have Mo Salah in the team next season. Of course, his contract is up next summer. Apparently Liverpool are going to look at his contract. Apparently, the Saudi Pro League are aware that Salah is probably going to stay at Liverpool. I don't know. I think it's early doors. I think it's early doors to be calling that this far in advance of the transfer window. I think the summer is a long time, and we saw the pressure that was applied towards the end of the summer transfer window in 2023. By the Saudi Pro League. I think it's more than possible that another big bid could come in and really, really tempt Liverpool. I think it feels like the right time for Salah to leave, mainly because you've got a new manager coming in, an up-and-coming manager. And, okay, on the one hand, one of the greatest, the best goal scorer in the club's Premier League history, you've got there. results-wise, he helps tide over for one season for sure. Like, he helps, pull Liverpool through difficult games. Just by the sheer numbers, this has been his poorest year in a Liverpool shirt. He's still got 26 goal involvements in the Premier League. It's absolutely outrageous. So, in that sense, you could see why he'd want to stay. But at the same time, if you want a bit more of a clean slate for Arne Slot to come in and really implement his style and not have the pressure of having to start one player every single game, then it feels maybe like the right time for Mo Salah to move on, especially if Liverpool can get 80, 90 million for him, perhaps even 100 million for him, and reinvest that, in areas that need work. For example, the midfield, find a top quality attacking replacement for him, because, are there going to be any more opportunities to sell him for a huge price? I'm not so sure. And what's more, I don't know, maybe it seems like Mo Salah wants to stay, but if he's offered a huge payday to go to the Saudi Pro League, then I think it will be tough for him to turn down one last payday like that before he retires. And of course, he remains a hugely commercially tantalising player, especially in the Arab world as well.
Huge.
So yeah, I think that is not case closed. Personally, I don't think in that sense.
And nor should Liverpool close it at this stage.
Yeah.
I think, why don't you at least, I mean, it's sensible to say this at the time, because you're not going to say we're open for offers on Monday morning when there's 2-3 games left of the season.
Yeah, only one year left on his deal.
Yeah. Come on down. But at the same time, it is sensible to say he's not for sale, because then you're going to drive up the price for sure. I think there was probably quite a decent opportunity that they would have sold him last summer if that 120 million? It was around there, came in June rather than, I think it was September the 1st or August the 31st. Those bids were coming in.
Time to replace.
No time to replace him. The only issue with replacing Mo Salah is not actually, I don't think, his absence from the team, even though that would be seismic. It's the kind of the lack of options, because there aren't just that many quality right wingers around. It's just a really weak position in world football. I think that, along with left back, is just, there's a real dearth of quality right wingers that have that level of consistency.
Absolutely. I mean, I before we came into the studio, I was kind of drew up a bit of a draft list of names, and it's not pretty, to be honest. Like, you've got someone like Leroy Sané, who we've spoken about in the past, but his goals and assists, well, he hasn't registered a goal involvement since February. Was obviously on absolute flames in the first half of the season, wasn't he? But he is an option if you want someone a bit older, a bit more proven, someone who does have world-class quality, who could come in and has made, has improved a lot on the right in more recent seasons. But then you're getting into, well, like Nicolas Gonzalez at Fiorentina, that kind of realm. 9 goals this season, 26 years old, doesn't probably have that much more developing to do. Then you look at someone who's Premier League proven, someone like Jared Bowen, who's 27, but does have kind of almost Salah output this season in a much worse West Ham side. 22 goals and assists in the Premier League this season, not to be sniffed at. Has played a bit as centre forward, but I think in terms of his profile, in terms of being a very clinical goal scorer, but also having that creative spark as well that Salah has, I think he's stylistically quite similar. Then do you think, like, is there a price for Cole Palmer? Maybe. I don't think so, probably, given how important he is to that Chelsea side. But that's the kind of quality player you're looking at. And then you're thinking maybe you go down the kind of the youth route, or someone who has worked in a slot system before. Igor Paxao has impressed this season for Feyenoord. 23-year-old Brazilian, can play on both wings. 9 goals this term. So there are options out there, but not amazing options. Obviously, you've got Harvey Elliott as well at the club, who's played in a right wing position, especially at Blackburn, where he was really quite something. But I think his best position is in the midfield. I think he's really well suited to that. But then you think, well, where does Szoboszlai play in that midfield? I don't know if you can have Elliott and McAllister and Szoboszlai playing in the same midfield. Szoboszlai has played on the right before. it is a puzzle for Arne Slot to work out. I think it's a puzzle as well for Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes to work out as well. Of course, they are in charge of transfers. I think this is what's going to be interesting this summer, is that we're going from a club that was run by Jürgen Klopp to one that is very much run by Michael Edwards now. And the intention, I think, is for Arne Slot not really to have a say in transfers much at all. They will have looked at his Feyenoord side, looked at his managerial history, looked at his style of play, and we know that Liverpool, especially with Michael Edwards at the helm, are incredibly data driven. There's obviously the famous story of Klopp wanting to sign Julian Brandt over Mo Salah, all these things. And since Michael Edwards' power, or since Michael Edwards left and Klopp gained more power at Liverpool, you have to say they have made some great signings, but nowhere near the hit rate that you had with Michael Edwards at the helm. You got players like Szoboszlai. We don't yet know how he's going to fare in the long term at Liverpool. Ryan Gravenberch, still unsure over him. I think it's exciting in that sense, and also with Arne Slot, you've got a guy who has been used to losing his top talent and still performing. The year that they won the league, he only retained 4 of his starting lineup from the previous year's Conference League final. You had Tyrell Malacia leaving for Man United. You had Senesi going to Bournemouth, Sinisterra to Leeds,
who'd been so crucial that year before as
and
well.
And that summer they signed Santiago Jimenez, for example, for €6 million from Cruz Azul, and he became figurehead of the attack in the second half of the season. So he is used to rebuilding teams with a good recruitment team around him, and that's what Feyenoord have had. Of course, like last season, lost Orkun Korkçu as well, his captain and a talismanic figure in the midfield, probably one of the top performing midfielders in all of Europe last term.
I think we might put him in our Continental Club's team of the season.
I think we might have done. Yeah. So he obviously got sold for quite big money to Benfica,
which hasn't gone brilliant.
And hasn't gone brilliantly. And yet they're on course to finish on a higher point tally than last year, only for PSV to put in this ridiculous season to beat them to the title. So there's lots of signs that Arne Slot is kind of suited to this. Having said that, it's a much bigger club. Liverpool are not. I know that they use that Coutinho money to sign Van Dijk and Alisson, and they have been a good selling club in general, but it's not quite the same, is it? They're not going to be picking up a Jimenez for €6 million. No. That's just not what, that's not where Liverpool are at this moment in time. They are one of the, very much one of the biggest clubs in Europe. They're not coming from a 8th place finish in 2015 and punching above their weight. Like, it's big. Like, he's taking on a bigger role than Klopp did, and Klopp was a Champions League finalist manager. He'd beaten Bayern Munich to 2 Bundesliga titles. He was an era-defining manager already by the time he was at Liverpool. So it is big in that sense, and I do see where Carragher's coming from in that sense. But I guess, let's get on to other areas, I guess. So we've spoken about Salah, but where else in this Liverpool team do you think where else do you think they need work?
Well, just as a general point on their transfers before we maybe move into more specifics as well, I think the big benefit of Coutinho's departure and the quality of players they managed to bring in was the fact that at that time Liverpool were a team on the rise, and a lot of players want to work with Jürgen Klopp. A lot of players, we overestimate how much players watch other leagues. Like, I can't imagine Arne Slot is a big name in Liverpool's dressing room prior to last week. There'll be a lot of them asking Cody Gakpo, there'll be a lot of them asking Van Dijk for information. They won't. It's not the sort of name that makes you go wow, and I think that is partly the Carragher kind of reasoning. It's not, you're signing Xabi Alonso, who's just had this incredible unbeaten season to date, the sort of coming force in European football management. It's Arne Slot, who is a little bit more of an unknown, despite the good work in the Eredivisie. It's just not a league that's even considered amongst the top 5 in Europe, and hasn't been for a long time. So that is a factor to take into account. But I think one of the areas that is supposedly one of his priorities is centre-back, which I find quite interesting, if I'm totally honest. I think it's partly down to his system. Basically, Van Dijk will be 33 in July. That is fairly old for a player. I know he started peaking quite late, so maybe he'll age quite nicely. I think he's been excellent this year up until the last few weeks. I think he's been close to faultless. He'd be a contender for team of the season in the Premier League alongside Gabriel and Saliba. I think it's probably between those three. But he is 33. He plays on the left side of defence. Do they see Joe Gomez playing that role naturally in the future? Do they see Ibrahima Konate, who has had a quite sizable dip in the last month as well? Gerald Quansah, I think, has been excellent this year as well, but is super young to be like, he's my Van Dijk replacement. So it feels like they are looking at centre-back for the future. Also, Konate and Gomez have both had injury issues in the past as well. If they are looking for a left-sided centre-back, I think they should look for a left footer. And when you join a club of Liverpool's calibre and you go up from the step of Feyenoord to Liverpool and you implement a slightly different style of play, much more possession-based, I think, than Klopp's in some areas, or at least early versions of Klopp, then I think it's quite useful to have someone that really knows your system inside out. So I wonder whether they'll look at David Hanko, who's the left back and left-sided centre-back, mainly left-sided centre-back for Feyenoord, left-footed, 6'2", Slovakian, amazing passing, just an amazing passer of the ball. Passes completed, top of the Eredivisie, ahead of Hato. Progressive passes, top of the Eredivisie, physically dominant, can play as a left back as well, which I think is useful because in Slot's system, it's the right back that inverts. It's Gertruida who inverts into midfield. That feels absolutely perfect for Trent going forward, but doesn't feel like Robertson's going to be bombing on. And Robertson's not as effective at that role as he was a few years ago. It's just the nature of coming towards the final part of your career. I don't think he's done by any stretch, and I definitely wouldn't look to sell him unless he wanted to leave. But David Hanko, who could play as a left back and cover inside, or play as a left-sided centre-back, would be someone that I'd potentially look at. So that's kind of the centre-backs that I'd consider. I do think David Hanko is the outstanding candidate for that role. I also remember in January suggesting Piero Hincapié at Bayer Leverkusen. He's still not starting in their starting 11. Would he want to swap Leverkusen for Liverpool? Probably, but it's no guarantee. They're playing Champions League football. They've got a very decent chance of going back-to-back in the Bundesliga. They could win another double.
Xavi wants to keep that team
together. Would you sell someone of his age range with his versatility? Unlikely as well. So I think it's a quite difficult role for Liverpool to fill, especially if it's a backup to Van Dijk for a year. Like, no one really wants to do that if they're 23 to 26 and they're really started hitting their straps, as it were. But you had a look at midfield as well, didn't you, Nick?
Yeah, I guess another one, not left-sided, but Jean-Claude Todibo, if they are, ultimately, if we're not counting Quansah as necessarily certified starter, even though I think he has been excellent, they still kind of need a replacement for Matip as well, don't they? At least in terms of depth, and Todibo is pretty ready for the Premier League, I would say, after an excellent few years in France. But yeah, midfield, this feels really pertinent. I think we'll look back on this season as a season in which somehow Klopp managed to make a midfield work, despite losing all its components fairly quickly over the last few years. Obviously, Henderson leaving last summer, Fabinho leaving last summer. Both of those players they were in decline, but nevertheless, it was such a defining part of their success in the late 2010s. And yeah, the fact that they missed out on Aurelien Tchouameni in 2022 to Real Madrid, they were still unable to find that Fabinho replacement last summer. Alexis McAllister did a very good job at 6 in the first part of the season, but as a result, we didn't see him do what he does best, which is further forward in the midfield, linking midfield and attack, contributing to the press, making things happen in the final third as well. And of course, Endo's done a very admirable job in the second half of the campaign there, but he wasn't by anywhere near the club's first choice to play there. He's 31 now. Yeah, was never really a long-term option for Liverpool, and I think he will continue to be a brilliant squad player. And I think he, can still, boss big games as a 6, but yeah, not a long-term option there. So I think defensive midfield, it needs to be a big priority for them this summer. And there are actually options out there. I was having a quick look, and Manuel Ugarte is a name that was really hot last summer. Obviously ended up at PSG for around 60 million euros, didn't he, from Sporting CP. where he was putting up crazy defensive numbers despite Sporting, having some of the highest possession stats in European football. PSG, of course, still have some of the best possession stats in European football, and Manuel Ugarte is still putting up close to 7 tackles and interceptions a game. So his overall game in that sense has not changed. It's just that he's not necessarily a week in, week out starter for PSG. He's still yet to fully earn the trust of Luis Enrique, isn't he? He's played decent minutes this season. He's had 19 starts in the league, but yeah, it hasn't necessarily,
definitely in the last few months.
Yeah, he's not necessarily been the quick fix that maybe, well, I certainly thought he might have been last summer. And he's still very young. But if Liverpool have that kind of budget, 70 million plus, it would probably take. It's probably a little bit out of their budget, but who knows? It is a big position for them to do it, for them to address. And if replacing Salah isn't something that they need to do, then I think defensive midfield should be the priority. So that would be something to look at. I think also, if we're looking in the Premier League, there's actually quite a lot of good young defensive midfield talent to choose from in the Premier League. Look at Crystal Palace, for example. Sheikh Doucouré, still out injured, but he's due back in June. Been a big miss for Palace since he's been out, and still only 24 years old. Really, just a really intelligent player, really reliable. But then you look at Palace, again, Adam Morton.
I thought you were going to go there.
Yeah, 19 years old, of course. We've all seen how impressive he's been.
Exceptional.
To come up from the Championship, where he was playing really good stuff for Blackburn, had crazy defensive numbers there, to step into this Palace side and boss big games, none more so than against Liverpool at Anfield. Yeah, he looks like a really special talent, and it would be very cheeky for Liverpool to go for a bid just 6 months after him arriving at Palace. But Palace paid good money for him as well, so he would probably cost quite a lot, but he does look like a real talent. And then my last suggestion was João Gomez at Wolves. Again, young, really promising, 23 years old.
Been linked with United.
Been linked with United as well. But yeah, he's just been so important to Gary O'Neill's projects at Wolves. Gary O'Neill, who was being linked with the Liverpool job only about 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I think there's a lot of options to choose from, and especially now in the Premier League, where more and more teams are becoming more and more dynamic, are becoming more and more tactically kind of interesting in that sense. As a result of kind of Klopp and Pep's influence on the league, I think there are far more players from kind of mid-table, even lower mid-table clubs who I think can make that transition to a bigger club more easily. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think, that's definitely where they need to focus on in defensive midfield. So it'll be super interesting. And as we saw at Feyenoord, if Arne Slot can find that kind of someone in that cork chew mould, someone who is defensively very adept, but is also a real ball progressor, can contribute in the final third as well, then I think he'll really be on for a winner.
There we have it, guys. I think we're fairly excited about it. I certainly am. It feels a little bit left field, and I'm quite pumped to see what Arne Slot's
I think maybe we're being overly. It feels like we're maybe being overly positive because so far it's been quite a subdued reaction. But it's to be honest, unless you're going to go for, say, Thomas Tuchel, who's actually out there, who's Champions League, elite level, world-class manager out there, there's not really much to choose from. And yes, Ruben Amorim, I think, has a bit more star to his name, but is that just because Sporting CP are, a bit of a cooler club than Feyenoord? There's probably been more stars come out of his side or certainly have been more stars come out of his side than at Feyenoord, but that's not to say that he was more suited to the role. And I think the main thing that I think is exciting is that you've got a manager now who probably won't have too much pressure on him for the first season. As long as fans can temper that expectation, then I think Arne Slot is going to be in a good environment to thrive. And if he doesn't, then I don't think that's necessarily a blot on him as a manager. But I think he's going to be given the best shot as
Yeah,
possible.
they definitely should be patient. I can see the slightly younger fans that haven't actually, they can't remember the struggle pre-Klopp as clearly, and just think, well, you know, we challenge every year, finding it a little bit difficult. And also, there is an argument that maybe Liverpool should have won slightly more in this Klopp era. So that's slightly frustrating that it's not like post Guardiola. I can imagine City fans being like, we have been spoiled. Like I can honestly handle 4 or 5 years of winning one FA Cup, whereas Liverpool almost still feel hungry for success because they've been denied so many times. So I hope Stock gets
and they have missed out, and they did miss out on Xabi Alonso. That's the thing as well. Like I think that was, you know,
homecoming hero.
It's obviously clear that he was the first choice, and so I guess that's one thing that could. I wouldn't want to say backfire necessarily, but that's one thing that could be a bit of a sticking point. Is that if things do get tough, then the kind of you weren't the first choice. That kind of vibe could begin to kick in with Arne Slot. So not an easy job by any means, but I think I just think if I was a Liverpool fan, I think I would just have a lot of faith in Michael Edwards. Like I've said his name a lot in this episode, but it does feel like this is the job of his life now for Edwards. This is probably the job that he's been working towards his whole career. And if he can get it right with a manager like Slot, then I think he has the keys to Anfield for the rest of his life, probably.
Absolutely. Getting ready for that Pep departure in a couple of years' time. It could be very, very exciting. Let's see how it goes. Guys, thank you so much for watching Monday Vibes for this week. I actually really enjoyed the reshoot. Favourite reshoot ever.
Yeah, great reshoot.
Just a Slot special and a good 32 minutes of it. So I'm sorry we didn't talk about the results, but there was plenty of content there, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We will be back on Sunday with a faultless shoot as ever, hopefully. Catch you later. Bye-bye.